Hello, this is Sherry from At 45, the magazine for women over 45 who are reconnecting with themselves and exploring what they want next. Live in Vancouver, I'm talking with Lucia Mann, award-winning author and social activist. She's a leading force for the abolishment of modern-day slavery and human trafficking, and yes, it still is happening. She founded the site reportmodern-day-slavery.org. Her books delve into shocking subject matter, shedding light on disruptive life situations. And her most recent is Addicted to Hate, touching on elder abuse. Welcome, Lucia.
Welcome, Sherry. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to be able to chat this morning. So often art imitates life. And I was struck with the news recently of Meghan Markle being received in South Africa as a biracial woman, and how it differs so dramatically from your experience shared, I think, in Addicted to Hate. How do you think that all has come to be?
Well, you're quite right. It's very different from the stereotyping that I endured and many others endured during the British colonial rule. However, with Meghan Markle, her popularity and her personality and her inspiration to others, I don't honestly believe that any country would stereotype her. But South Africa has become more free. It's the freedom that I see now over there. The conflict still exists, and racial discrimination is going to go through the whole world. But Meghan Markle is an inspiration, and I think her acceptance over there might possibly change the attitude that the South Africa I knew will remain. She is remarkable in her persistence. She doesn't look at herself as being biracial. She's a human being. We were not human beings in the era I lived through, but she is an inspiration to all. So the welcome that she will get over there and is receiving over there, I'm so happy about.
It's very powerful. And I was so struck by the beginnings that you shared in Addicted to Hate, and yet what an amazing life you've led.
I have, like I said, I've had an amazing life, a remarkable life. Some incredibility there where people will say, how did you endure that? Because I could. I was born with a gift never to blame myself for somebody else's wrongdoings. I knew that I would succeed right from a very early age. I was not going to let them rob me of who I was, and neither does Meghan Markle.
Absolutely. So can you just share some of the highlights that are sort of covered in Addicted to Hate, as far as, you know, some of the jobs that you've had over the years?
I've had some beautiful professional careers, but at a young age, I'm gifted with high intelligence, and I wasn't expecting somebody to come and recruit me, because I had come from Africa, illiterate, literally, uneducated, but had a brain as smart as anybody else. And I was recruited in 1967, and I became an intelligence officer, linguistics specialist. And I could hardly read and write. So it shows you what the brain and the human being is capable of producing something, because the challenges they have had, you overcome those because you know who you are. And I'm very fortunate to say I'm a former intelligence officer. And people used to make jokes and say, oh, she's a spy. No, I wasn't. I was a linguistic specialist. I have a flair for languages. I speak several. My reading and writing is not so good anymore, but I knew that I could decode a message that was in Arabic, or I went to El Salvador as a journalist. I could speak Spanish, and so I was proud of that. Like, I can do it. And I have achieved a lot in my life. And there's a pride, there's humbleness, but there's also pride, because pride to me is that I have come from absolutely nothing. And I have maintained the highest profession that anybody could be lucky to have.
Well, that's very inspirational to so many women. You know, one thing I find about aging and my own journey is that sometimes the mundaneness of life can be overwhelming, or something that you want to escape from, or to be able to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found so inspiring about Addicted to Hate, was the journey of that person's life, which I think, you know, mimics yours to some degree. So it's very inspirational to
It was a raw write, I must admit. This was my sixth book, but it was most of my books have some autobiographical content, dramatized, of course, but they all lead to suffering. But the suffering I have endured has made me strong. And in my mature wisdom years now, I feel like I can relate to anything, any trauma, any experience. And I can give that strength to somebody else, even when they feel like it's hopeless, it's helpless. I can't get past this pain. Yes, you can. You have to challenge it, but you have to be strong. You have to have the resilience inside of you to become who you are in your mature years, because all those challenges that you've been through during your life are nothing compared to who you are today. I'm a strong woman. I'm a strong woman against the odds, literally against the odds. You know, I should be in a psych ward, you know, according to some, but I'm not, because from an early age, I realized that you cannot take from somebody else that belongs to you. Your life is your life. You know, you're not a robot, but you're not to blame. You're not to blame for wrongdoings. So Addicted to Hate was rather painful for me, and my other books, you know, with certain things. But all these sufferings that I've endured has made me who I am today, a beautiful person inside out. And nobody can take that off me.
Well, and I think that's something that all of us should embrace at whatever age we are, that
Yes.
We are the perfect instance of who we are to be.
Yes, exactly. That's a wonderful saying. But I know that I have had a lot of attention and recognition for this particular book, because I did touch a taboo subject. Most of my books have taboo subjects in, but this one would relate to somebody who had, like me, you know, suffered in silence. The shame involved in elder abuse, parent abuse. It's not something you talk, not even to your loved ones. You hide it. And I hid this pain along with a lot of my childhood experiences, because I no longer wanted to be accountable for somebody else's wrongdoing. I had to be strong. But when I wrote this book, it did break me to a degree, because I thought, if I am suffering, how many others are? How can I reach to that person and say, you have to say no? I am reclaiming my life. You are not going to make a victim out of me. And at the end of that rite, it was such a relief. Therapeutically, spiritually, mentally, it was a release, because I know I'm going to touch others who have lived like me with shame.
Well, and it's true, you know, being in that situation, of course, there's shame, but there's a bigger message too behind reading that book. For me, was that often there are many things in our life, and just the natural evolution of our life, that that may bring us shame, and you actually, your book inspires the intent to own that shame,
Yes.
own that experience, but not accept it as a flaw
Yes.
of yours.
Yes. Never give a license to the wrongdoer. Right? You have to be strong. It's not easy. It was very challenging for me because I'd had a history of trauma, but I was able to cope with that trauma pretty well. And I'm not going to say I'm unscathed because I am. I'm scarred. But I look at those scars as people would look at trophies. I overcame that. I overcame that incident. When I look back on my life, and I had to ask myself, how on earth did you get through all that? Because I could. I was able to take that trauma and make an emotional resilience so strong that I could beat anything, and can do to this day. But Addicted to Hate was hard for me because it was a really, really personal when it came to my offspring, my children. They gained nothing by the attacks, verbally, physically. They gained nothing. It was narcissistic, and I realized at the end of the day, they're not to blame either. They're miswired. They're not to blame. You know, I reproached myself, thinking, what did I do wrong? I did nothing wrong. I knew that. But it was the inability to cope with failure. A lot of people can't cope with failure, things that go wrong in their life. And so they want to take that blame and hand it to somebody else to carry. And I was not going to carry it a moment longer. I was done.
So what was the catalyst, do you think, for being able to move on? If someone is feeling that kind of hopelessness, Lucia, like, what is one step they can take?
You have
That,
to believe in yourself, Sherry. You have to come to terms that you're a human being. You're allowed to fall down the cracks. You're allowed to make boo-boos, mistakes, but you have to believe in yourself. You have to say to yourself, okay, I'm not to blame. I am not to blame for somebody else's fallings, their ugliness, their hatred, their bitterness, their own failures in life. You are not to blame. They have to be accountable for their own mistakes. You cannot take that mistake or that failure and put it onto somebody's shoulders and expect them to carry it. That is not the way human ethics evolve. You have to believe in yourself. You have to say, I am strong. I have to overcome this tragic moment, or this horrible feeling of the emotions that human beings are bestowed with. Some of them, like fear and helplessness and hopelessness, will eat them alive if they don't conquer them. You have to
absolutely.
believe in yourself. You have to take a good look at yourself in the mirror and say, I like myself. I have flaws, but I'm not going to allow that person to rob me of who I am. And that's what I did at the end of the day.
So do you think that once people have accepted that realization that they're not responsible, that there is no shame, or the shame is not representing them, um, lots of times, and people don't know who to reach out to, you know, whether it should be a health professional. There's a lot of shame in just trying to share the situation. And so do you have any recommendations around that, or?
Well, I always used to tell people I have become a little bit of a clinical therapist in this area because people trust me. Find somebody you trust, somebody that can relate to you, somebody that has had trauma. It's no point in going to a therapist who cannot relate to you. When you go in to get professional help, it's great, it's textbook. But at the end of the day, you need to put your hand out to somebody else that you trust and that can relate to that trauma or that particular incident in your life that you're unable to cope with. For example, an elderly lady came to see me after I wrote Rented Silence, and she had bottled her sexual assault for all her life. And she said, in your writing, I realized that I no longer could remain silent. Would you listen to me? I said, sure. And we sat down, and I said, why don't you release all that pent up? Why are you still carrying it? Why didn't you speak to your loved ones? I couldn't. They wouldn't believe me. Find somebody who you trust, who you have a lot of bonding with. Now, you can talk about the incident or the trauma, release it from the hippocampus, get rid of the baggage. Now, and if that person has had a similar traumatic experience, then you talk about it, release those pent up memories or those blocked memories or the hidden memories or the shameful memories. Talk about it. And they might not be clinically trained, but they're there for you because they're listening.
Yeah,
That's what I've done.
listening, having someone to listen is, and not pass judgment.
Yeah, pour your soul out. And especially if you're bond with that person, you know inside if there is that bonding. Because if you give somebody a hug and it's lovely and warm, you know that person is there for you. If you give somebody a hug and it's pretty cold, you know you're not going to open up to that person. But there is just next door neighbor, somebody who that you bonded with, who will listen. They might not truly understand the pain if they have not, and they can't relate to it, but they will give you their strength, because they will say, for example, I'm sorry that happened to you, but we need to heal together.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that wisdom, Lucia. I know that there's many people, many women sitting in our audience dealing with situations that of trauma, that they feel shame, and it's very inspirational to hear the message. It's not your shame.
Sherry, I am here 24/7. There isn't anything I haven't been through that I haven't overcome, with great difficulty, some of them. But, I have an email address, I have a website. Talk to me. I have the answers. I've been there.
Wow.
I can relate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And in the at the bottom of the video and in the article, I will put your website and contact information.
I'll be here for anyone who feels that they don't have the strength to move forward, because I will give them that strength.
That's fabulous. So on a lighter note, Lucia, what was the best advice in your storied career that you ever received?
Well, somebody said to me, you're definitely on the right path. I remember that. You're definitely on the right path. Because I had to transition from a journalist to a novelist. And it wasn't easy. I made some terrible, oh my goodness me, my grammar was absolutely atrocious. But I was able to show and not tell. So the sort of remarks and the sort of, God, wow, you're so descriptive. I don't have to go to Africa. I don't have to go there. I'm walking with your words. That was wonderful, because I was able to describe, I'm a little over descriptive, but I was able to allow the reader to walk with me on that red soil in Africa, to feel that heat on their back or the baboon running down the tree. I wanted them to go on that journey with me. And so I'm a little over descriptive, but the advice was that I don't even have to use my imagination.
Well, I think that's every writer's dream to hear that.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. But over the years, I have received a lot of praise, and it gives me the inspiration to move and keep on writing. I'll never give up until there's no breath in this body. I'm not likely to have Alzheimer's. It's not in my DNA. I am definitely going to continue to write. I have more or less exhausted the trauma in my life to a degree, but ever so often I'll hear a story like the atrocities that happened in El Salvador. This book I'm writing is called The Little Breadwinner, and it was about a little dwarf I met her, the feistiest little person I've ever met in my life, with more courage than I'll ever have. And these are the type of characters I want to know, I want to experience, I want to write about. So I'll continue to write for to be that victim, to be that voice for the victims. I will, and I'm not going to give up. I'll challenge anything.
Well, you've got a storied set of books, and I can't wait for the next one.
Well, I'm waiting for Amazon to get their act together, but it should be released shortly.
And so what do you need to make more room in your life for, Lucia?
I Now that's a lovely question. Did I write that down? Positive energy. To understand myself. I want that more positive energy to understand myself and the motivations that keep me going like a steam train. I'm at it, regardless of the stumbling blocks, because I got many of those. Good Lord, I'm flawed. But I've always been goal orientated. So at the end of the day, I don't want to give up on any challenge. That's what keeps me going.
Well, and positive energy, there's just
Oh,
so little of it in the world, in the overview. And I think you have to draw it from the people around you,
yeah.
because otherwise you just get overwhelmed with the negativity in the world.
Well, negativity is, to me, it's a crime to the human being. It shouldn't exist, but it does. I mean, there was a gentleman that passed my house, and he said, "Oh, you've had so many beautiful birds in your garden." I said, "Yeah, because it's a positive garden." He wasn't the nicest of men. And I knew he was negative. You can feel it in another person. It's like
Yeah.
a little dark shadow goes over them, and you say to her, "Why are you so negative? You're a beautiful person. Start thinking nice thoughts." So, yeah, sometimes I get a little immature and tell people off, and I'm very blunt.
Well, I have one more question for you. If you could learn anything new, what would it be?
Anything new? Patience. I'm sadly lacking in patience. It's a horrible flaw. I've had it all my life. But I think if I could have, did I write anything about that? Yeah, patience comes with developing a team of loved ones and professionals that you work with. You take those professionals, you take those loved ones that you trust, and show gratitude. I would love to be able to have full heart of gratitude, especially when I have no patience.
Well, you're just delightful, and your persona is so different than the difficult subjects that you deal with in your books. So,
I told you I'm a hybrid alien. I wanted to find Neanderthal in my DNA. I mean, I have a very impressive DNA, and it's in my new book. It's all written in there, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I had some scurrilous ancestors. But most of the ancestors in my DNA, that we can go right back to the Judean desert, with Israelites, um, they were warriors, and that's where I get my strength from. If they can do it, so they gave me their blood. It might be a little mixed, but they gave me their blood, and I feel like there is, like Helen of Troy, I can go and do anything. I will never be afraid again. Never. I am strong now, and being wise in my old age gives me that little bit of insight into the younger generation who are struggling with emotions, and most of them are letting them down badly. They're angry people. They're angry generation. And I want to show them that this little Sicilian bred woman can do anything and heal.
well, I think that's an amazing life lesson to share, Lucia.
Thank you, Sherry. It's so lovely to talk to you.
Oh, well, it's been a wonderful to connect with you. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, this video is going to be part of an article on Lucia
Yeah.
because there was an amazing thing that happened in your life that most women couldn't imagine, Lucia. And we're not going to share it in the video. People will need to read the article to find it, which we'll have in at the bottom of the link. But you've definitely achieved some highlights in your life.
Like I said, I'm not sure if I'm a hybrid alien, but I'm a strong woman.
Well, thank you so
And
much for speaking with
I
us.
want to share that strength with others. You know, I'll always have that little brokenness inside me, but I know how to heal. And I move on very directly. I won't let it take over me or who I am. But if there is somebody out there that needs that kind voice on the other side who can relate to most atrocities, I'm there for them. 24/7. I do it. I mean, I had a call the other night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I just wanted to reach out, give that person a hug, but I spoke in a passive tone and relieved that pain. And I got a beautiful thank you in my email this morning. So if I can reach, if there's anyone out there, and I mean this, I will be there for them because there is nothing I have not endured and come out sparkling.
Thank you. Well, Lucia, just what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Well, I have on my webpage it says contact. On my website it says contact.
Okay.
They can do that via there. You're welcome to give out my email. And once I have made that contact, I will give them my personal cell phone so that I will always be there for them, regardless.
Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sweetie, and lovely to talk. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
Bye, Sherry.